so that they don't yell at me later. And we've got 21, which is actually nice for, that's surprising because when the weather's nice outside, nobody wants to sit in front of a Zoom call at the end of the day. I get that. Hence, I'm making coffee right now. Okay, so the main thing here, I'll do a little intro, a couple disclaimers first. My name is Boomer Sassman. My company is called Big Boom Design. It's a WordPress agency that I started right out of college about 17 years ago. I went to App State for product design. I have a high school, elementary school, and a middle school, and a fire station all across the street from my house. So if you hear sirens, it's the fire station, hopefully. And so I might mute myself at one point, but it rarely gets super duper loud. I'm in a 30 by 60 foot Quonset building, before anybody gets confused and thinks I'm underground somewhere. It's a big metal hoop building with insulation, and workshop down there, and then kind of office up top. A couple more people coming in here. I'm gonna run through. I also don't really like PowerPoints, so I'm gonna run through an actual like live demo. All of my classes that I teach are kind of live demos. You talk to some people and they say you should never do that as an instructor because stuff like can just jump out and change. I do that because of that reason. For years, I taught pre-camp, which is like a WordPress boot camp. All that one day, 100 people in a room, we'd build 100 websites. And I tried for years to kind of create screenshots of the different steps. And without fail, every time I would go try to teach that, some step has changed. Terminology's changed, a button's moved. And that in itself is one of the most frustrating things, not just with WordPress, but web design and just the internet in general. It moves fast. And there's nothing we can do about that other than ignore it or keep up. So because of that, I like to do live demos because something is different from the last time that I taught this, guaranteed. And so as we run up into those issues, we'll talk about it and we'll deal with it. I'll say, hey, this used to be over here, or this used to be called this, or I might reference something and then go to try to find it and it's just not there anymore. So we'll deal with all that as we kind of work through it. I'll do my best to finish all of my sentences. If I don't and I leave you hanging, call it out. I'll try to run back to it. And then I also do my best to try to stay very linear with the delivery of this stuff. Internet's not very linear, so that's hard at times, but I walk through WordPress and the setup of WordPress based on my experience over the past 17 years of building WordPress sites. I've probably done 600 to 800 sites. And it's evolved a lot. And so I've kind of critiqued as I teach, every time I teach, pull some stuff out, add some stuff in. Sometimes people ask me to loop things in as well. So, okay, cool. Let me go ahead and share my screen. One here. I'm looking at 3 screens. I've got you guys on the front in the middle. I'm going to be building a site over here, so I'll be looking that way a lot. And then I've got my notes over here with some content that I'm going to be plugging into the site. So any last minute questions before I start digging in? I'm going to start digging in. Cool. Okay. First thing that we kind of have to talk about, unfortunately, is the difference between WordPress.com and WordPress.org. And I'm going to wrap in a little bit of geeky, nerdy, I love WordPress conversation in this as well. I've been using WordPress since it came out almost 20 years ago, and it's changed a lot. And one of the things that's complicated, at least early on as an early adopter, somebody who has maybe worked with another website platform and jumping into WordPress, is the fact that there are 2 WordPresses. There is WordPress.org and WordPress.com. Unfortunately, we have to talk about this because if we don't, half of you guys are going to leave this class and you'll go off and you'll jump into the wrong one. And the wrong one is WordPress.com. Let me go ahead and it's actually got me pre-logged in here. Let's see if I can just get back to over in Firefox, get that going. There we go. So WordPress.com is essentially WordPress with training wheels. And so whoever it was that was talking earlier that said, I was told to kind of transition from one to the other, you're probably on WordPress.com, which is it's WordPress with training wheels. And they said, hey, you need to go to WordPress.org. For the purpose of teaching you guys what the difference is, They're almost the exact same thing, but the biggest difference is that with WordPress.org, you have to go and host it somewhere. You have to go to GoDaddy or SiteGround or Network Solutions or Bluehost or any of these hosting companies out there, and you have to pay them, that company, for hosting the website. And that's not a big problem. It's not super expensive these days. And going that route, going the WordPress.org route, sets you up for a limitless WordPress website experience. And what I mean by that is WordPress lets you do anything and everything with their platform. So that's another really cool thing about WordPress, is that it's open source. It means the source code's open. If you're not coders, that's fine. I'm not really either. But it just means that you can ingest it and change it and put it back out there and distribute it however you want to do that. It's amazing. And it's free. You do have to pay somebody, a company, to host it. So from this point moving forward in this next 2 hours, everything that I talk about is WordPress.org. And so if I go over to WordPress.org, it's got a slightly different look and feel. And this is where they would say, hey, go ahead and download a copy of WordPress and go ahead and get started. We don't need to do this these days. WordPress back in the day had this claim. They said like 5 minutes setup of WordPress. That was a lie. It was way more complicated than that to get it all set up. So you go, you download a copy of WordPress, then you've got this zip file, then you got to figure out what to do with it, which you were supposed to then unzip it, upload it, set it up on a server, all this stuff. You don't have to do that anymore. These days, what you can do is go to somebody like GoDaddy, and I'm going to use GoDaddy not because I like them a lot, just because that's a company that most of you have probably heard about. Most of you probably have a domain name through them. If you have a domain name, maybe not, but that's fine. And I'm just going to kind of use them as an example to talk about how all of the hosting companies have evolved over the past 10 to 15 years. So these days, when you go to a hosting company like GoDaddy, they're going to have very specific hosting for WordPress. You can go and get hosting with any company that offers you hosting, and they'll say, here's a Linux server or here's a Windows server, but you want to try to go in and get specifically to a WordPress hosting plan, ideally. It's going to be a little bit more expensive, maybe like 10 to 12 bucks a month instead of like $6 a month, but that's worth it. And the reason why that's worth it is because when you sign up and you say, hey, I want a WordPress site, they will do all of the setup for you. They'll spin up a little environment for you in a little space. They'll say you get 10 gigabytes of storage, you get 100,000 visitors of bandwidth. We're going to charge you this much per month. And based on these little items that they've got these check marks on, you get certain things. The one thing that I would point out, and I am seeing this now in the entry level, is, and this used to not be there, is a free SSL. That's really good. That's kind of become a standard. And SSL, here's some first 3-letter acronym for the day. SSL is Secure Socket Layer, in case you're at a trivia night or anything. You'll never need to know that, but it's a little ozone that goes around your website that encrypts all the traffic, whether you're doing e-commerce or not. And these days, Google says you should have an SSL on your site, period. And so now, luckily, all these different levels are going to come with an SSL built into it. So $9 a month can get you going, $107 for the year. Questions on hosting before we roll on? It's fairly straightforward. I cut a lot of corners on that, but we're not doing a hosting talk. It's WordPress, but I have to cover hosting. Yeah. Your domain name, there's a question that often pops up. It's okay to have your domain name and your hosting at different places or the same spot. Doesn't matter. Some people will say you should never do that because if your site goes down, you want to be able to point your domain name away. It doesn't happen. GoDaddy's gone down one time in 20 years that I know of, and it was like the world panicked for about 6 hours. I got lots of phone calls saying my website's down, and I was like, Google's down too. So pick a hosting company. Again, I'll run through these kind of legit ones. SiteGround's a really good company. WP Engine's pretty good. Kinsta is the kind of creme de la creme, top level that's out there. Super fast, fantastic tech support. Plans start at $30 a month. $35 a month.
What was that?
Kinsta. I've got it. Am I still sharing my screen? Is this still pulled up? Okay. Kinsta, K-I-N-S-T-A. They're the best of the best right now. And I don't get paid to say that. I pay them a lot of money so that I can't say that. We have multiple servers with them, and that's where all of our biggest clients live, is on a Kinsta server. SiteGround, Bluehost, GoDaddy, Network Solutions, I would kind of stay away from. They're a pain to transfer away from, so don't start there. And yeah, and any of those any of those hosting companies will have WordPress hosting right out of the box. And you'll go and you'll put in some information, and they will then send you an email, and they'll say, here's your fresh site. So that leads me to a fresh site, which is right here, that I set up just before you guys all joined. Give me a second, I'm gonna pour this coffee. So every hosting company is going to be a little different in a lot of ways: cost, speed, security, features, all different types of things, but they're all going to have the kind of the bare minimum that you actually need to run and build a WordPress site. They're not going to do anything to help build the site out for you, but they'll say, here's your playground, go start doing your thing. So one thing I want to point out early on is the fact that this is a straight up WordPress site that I have done zero things to, other than I've loaded a theme, not the one that's active, and we'll get into that. And I've loaded a handful of plugins, which we're going to go through and kind of talk about. It just helped me speed up the process. We've got a lot to talk about in 2 hours. And so we'll see that here in a few once I get into that. But what I want to point out is that this is intentionally very boring. The look and feel. It sucks. It's just a white screen that's got very little. The font's boring. There's no images. That green is hideous for the button. Like, why pick people out into the ether with this type of experience? And it's boring intentionally, because one of the reasons why is because the content is more important than the website. And that is something that it took me a long time to really kind of figure out how to say it easily, but content wins. Doesn't matter how many cool pictures you've got, doesn't matter what your domain name is, it really doesn't even matter what platform you build it on. If you don't have content, everything crumbles. And I'm not a content person. I can write it if I have to, but that is one thing that I try to constantly remind people, either in a class or clients, is that I don't write your content. You write your content, or someone that you know or hire or that works with you writes the content. And that is something that, in my opinion, you should start on long before you sign up for hosting, get a domain name, and start finding expensive photos from iStockPhoto. Start to pull together some kind of document where you're organizing your thoughts about what's going to go onto the website into a Word document. And I've got examples that we'll look at in a few. But it's intentionally boring. I want to point out also that I am logged in at the moment. And I know that because I've got this top black bar that runs across the top here, and it says Howdy Boomer over at the right. And then it's got this WordPress 101, which is what I called it when I set up the site. And so the first little bit of this class, I always do kind of like the anatomy of WordPress and how to navigate around, just so that you're kind of comfortable with that. So this is what we would call the front side of the website. This is what people would see if they went to it. This is not the domain name that I chose. This is like a temporary domain name. It's WordPress101.kinsta.cloud. If I set up my staging site over at another company, it would be completely different, and it would be whatever they decided is my temporary address to get to it. Every WordPress site is the same as far as how you get logged in, and it is WP-admin at the end of it. So if you, is anybody in here already managing a site? I need to pull the chat around so I can see what you guys are throwing in here. That's one of the other disclaimers. I'll do my best to keep up with this chat. Sometimes I have to go in like little sprints to make sure I'm not losing this. So if anybody has a WordPress site that you've either inherited or been voluntold to manage for your organization or your company, and you're like, oh my God, I need to take a crash course on WordPress, you'll get some of that in this next 2 hours, but most of the time, it's best to get somebody who can give you direction and feedback and training on your site, because they can be very different over time. But for the most part, to log into any WordPress site, it's going to be whatever the domain name is, or the temporary domain name /WP-admin. And that's going to get you to a login screen, username, password, and then that will take you into the dashboard. So before we start talking about what all this stuff is, I'm going to show you this, that if you click on the name of the site at the top left, it'll jump you between the front and the back side. And so we're going to use this top admin bar often to kind of navigate around between the front side, which is where we are now, and the back side, which is what you get to see only as an admin. Unfortunately, some of this early stuff that I'm going to run through is boring in the sense that it's like settings of WordPress. It's not the sexy, like we're going to load a theme, and we will do all that stuff, but just bear with me and I promise we'll get to the cooler, more interesting stuff. So a bit of this beginning is really just like, what am I looking at? What is all this stuff? We've got an intro top section. Again, this is only here because I just set the WordPress site up. And it's just going to kind of walk you through a few of the different features that have been recently added. I want to point out that right there, it says 6.3.1 version. That's irrelevant. Doesn't really matter. It's just kind of like where we're at with WordPress these days. There are updates that get rolled out, and it's a good idea to run updates. More on that later as well. But for now, I'm just going to dismiss. So we can kind of start to clean some stuff up. These little blocks can get moved around if you want them to. You can collapse them if you want them to. If you want to, you can hide them. Left to right, we've got top left, this site health. We haven't started building the site yet, so there's really no health issues. Once we start building things, we might see health issues stack up. This at a glance, and let me zoom in just a little bit. I'm not sure how difficult that is, and if any of you are on like a tablet or a smaller screen, it might be challenging, but this at a glance kind of gives us an idea about the amount of content that's on the site. So we've got one post, one page, and one comment. Again, we're running version 6.3.1, and we're using the 2023 theme. And the theme is essentially a paint job. There's more to that, and we'll get into it, but the theme is like the skin that gets wrapped around the site. It gets wrapped around your pages. It gets wrapped around the different areas of your site. That's really cool. I kind of blasted through that, but the fact that you can reskin or retheme your site and not have to tear it down and rebuild it is really, really cool. And that is a thing because it's a content management system. We're able to kind of like wrap this design around it and not have to completely alter and change all of our content in the process. We've got this quick draft section right here. I have never used this one time. It creates a quick little blog post, but you're limited to literally just the title and just a box right there. It's almost like it's a notepad for you to just like brain dump a little idea to come back to later. Just go in and make the post or make the page the right way, and we'll do that. Activity, this is going to kind of show you things related to comments and discussions that may be happening if you're running more of a blog and less of a website. We'll talk a little bit about that as well. And then over on that far hand right side, the WordPress events and news. This is WordPress's attempt to get people using WordPress to get together in person, which is great. WordPress is big into community, and so they know where this site essentially is being built. They know I'm in Asheville, Leicester technically, but that's why they pull in the Greenville meetup and the Atlanta WordCamp and things like that. WordCamps are big conferences that are put on. We used to have one here in Asheville that I helped organize, and then COVID kind of squashed that, and they're slowly coming back. Questions on the dashboard? It's pretty straightforward. There's nothing too complex yet. Okay. Covered opensource.com.org, hosting and domains. Let's dig in a little bit just to some initial settings. This is where you may want to just jot a couple notes down or even take a screenshot, because there's just some screens and some settings that can set you off for success. And if you don't know about them and you start building your site, you might have to backtrack a little bit. So there's really just a few of them that I want to talk about. So I'm going to jump to the very bottom of this menu over here and go to settings. And we're just going to look at maybe two of these screens, and then we're actually going to kind of jump in and start building stuff. So on the settings screen at general, we've got the name of the site. That can be whatever you want it to be. We've got the tagline. Those two things are kind of used to help label your site for you, but also for the world out there. It helps a little bit with SEO to have the proper title and the proper tagline plugged in there. This WordPress address and site address, you should never change these. It will crash your site instantly. Guarantee it. Yeah. And actually, some hosting companies won't even let you change those things. So Once you do go live with your website, this is something that if your hosting company helps you do that, this will automatically change and that will become your domain name. It'll automatically switch from what's in there now to your actual domain name. But if you try to just do that and you're like, hey, I just want this to show up in my domain, it's going to crash and burn and you won't be able to get back to it. Oh, that's cool. I didn't even know who's doing that. Marlo, that's pretty neat. Can everybody see that? The little annotation on there? That's pretty cool.
I didn't realize that everybody could see that. Sorry.
No, it's okay. It's all right. I'm a Google Meet guy, so I only use Zoom when I hop in to teach. Admin email address. Again, if you have inherited a site built by somebody else, that's one thing that you might want to go to and just double check to make sure that it's not tied back to that person that built it. We inherit lots of sites from lots of companies where the developer's name is plugged in there, and that's a dangerous thing. It's a vulnerable thing. You want to make sure that whatever email address is plugged in for that administrator email address is one that you have access to, ideally yours. You'll get some annoying emails about, bugs at times if the site hiccups, and you'll get, things like that. But a lot of times that email address is used for forms to like refer to. It's like, who's the admin? Send the form to that person. So make sure that's set up for you. And again, I haven't changed anything else in here. I'm going to leave all of the rest of this exactly the same. It's about altering times if your server's in different time zones and things like that. We'll jump down to writing. Nothing to look at here. Don't worry about this one. Reading is an important screen where there's one very important checkbox, and then there's an important drop down, and we're going to come back to the drop down later. But right off the bat, I don't know if you noticed, but on that homepage, when we were looking at the WordPress site on the front, it said something about like, your one most recent post. WordPress right out of the box is a blogging platform. It has been since the beginning. So way back in the day, like 20 years ago when WordPress first started, it was a blog only. You couldn't make pages. That was an evolution of WordPress. And so that's why even today, it's got its roots as a blogging platform. So if you're building a blog, cool, you don't have to do anything here. Most of you are probably building or want to build a website, maybe with a blog as part of it. And so in a few minutes, once we start building out pages, we'll come back in and we'll set this to a static page, and that'll make it a website and not a blog. And then the other thing I mentioned down here, this is super important, is search engine visibility. Discourage search engines from indexing this site. You want to keep this checkbox checked until you're ready to have the world find your website. Now, that might not happen super fast. You might have a brand new domain name, brand new business, brand new site. You launch it, you uncheck that box, and you're like, why is nobody showing up at the website? It's because it's brand new. But if you're actively like building out your site, you don't want Google or anybody coming to the site yet. So make sure that's checked. And then once you're ready, uncheck it, click save. Again, if you already have a site that you're involved in, go double check and make sure that that is unchecked, assuming you want Google to find it. We've inherited some sites where people spent upwards of $10,000 to have a website built that launched that was never showing up on Google. And we went in, like, unchecked that box and click save. And I was like, how much did you pay for this website? So double check that. It's kind of a hidden little page, but it's not that hidden. I think that's everything I want to talk about as far as the settings. We're going to loop back around to a few of those, but for now, I think that's good. That covers my notes, at least, that I wanted to talk about. All right. I'm going to jump back up and we're going to go make a post. And again, I like to just kind of build and start working our way through it rather than just like looking at slides. So remember on that dashboard, it said one post, one page, one comment. Hello world is the one post. And so if we go look at it, it's going to give us this little intro because this is the first time we've dug into anything. This is built right into WordPress. You'll get this regardless of the hosting company that you're with. And the main thing that this is talking about is the block editor. Again, I kind of have to like pause on this train for a second and say that a few years back, there was a big evolution that happened. For about 20 years, we all interacted with this thing called the WYSIWYG, which stands for what you see is what you get. It's an acronym for that. And so the WYSIWYG was what we all interacted with. We still do that. We still do that to some degree. when you go to compose an email and it's got the rows of buttons, italicized, bold, all those buttons up top, that's the WYSIWYG. That has gone away as far as WordPress is concerned, and I'll show you a way to get that back if you want it. But it evolved into what's called the Gutenberg block editor. It was a big contentious thing in the WordPress space. There was a lot of really pissed off people that had been building on WordPress for decades, and then they were like, "You're taking our WYSIWYG," and they're like, "Yeah, it's for the better," and it is, but it's taken a while for people to come around to it. So anyway, if this is your first experience with it, I would advise you to kind of work through the little steps that they try to walk you through to get to know the editor and all this stuff. I'm going to skip past all that, and we're just going to do it in a minute. So again, it's intentionally bland. They strip a lot of stuff out. There's not a whole lot going on to get you too distracted. The goal is content. The goal is produce some content that's quality if you can. And so at the top, we're gonna have this "Hello World." It's the blog post title. And then right down here, we're going to have "Welcome to WordPress," and this is your first post. Now, obviously, this is just here for you to practice like deleting this post. But also, if you're a little nervous to like jump in and start making your own, you can just come in here and start using theirs. So again, to kind of talk about like the anatomy of what we're looking at, I'm going to talk about this right-hand side and how that changes as we kind of click around on the page, on the post. I'm going to use page and post kind of interchangeably because they are essentially the exact same thing. There's a few extra pieces when you talk about posts, but they're the same as far as building the content and editing and that kind of stuff. So if I click out here, kind of just out away from the content, you'll notice that that right-hand side changed. And now this post section is highlighted. So this is the right-hand side right now is our settings all about this particular post. It is public, meaning it's not private or hidden or anything. It is public and published. It was published on earlier today. It is a single post. There's some template styles that you could use. We'll get into that a little bit later. And then there's a URL. And in this case, we've got this $P=1 is like the ID number of this post. And we'll also talk a little bit more about that later. It's got the author. I'm the only user on the site right now, so I've got my name plugged in there. And then we've got two buttons down here to either trash the post or switch it to a draft. So there is this draft status that you can have your content live in where it's not published yet. So let's say your site's live, let's fast forward 6 months from now, you got a website live, you want to work on a new blog post, you craft it all out, save draft, work on it, save draft, work on it. And then when you're ready to publish it, that's when you actually publish. You can also date stuff in the future if you want it to auto publish. We help out a lot of clients with that, where they'll send us 5 or 6 blog posts, and then we'll go in and set them all up and then stagger the publish dates so that it looks like they're being really active on their site. The next couple of things that I want to talk about, 2 of them in particular are really helpful, and we will dig into this, and there should be some questions around it. If not, I'll dig into the answers that should follow the questions that should be asked. Categories, tags, and featured images are 3 things that are unique to posts, blog posts. Category, tag, featured image. A category is a big bucket. News, press releases, events, big buckets that you're going to put content in. I can't necessarily tell you what your categories could be because I don't know what you're building. I do try to encourage everybody to craft content that is educational and helpful for whatever your business happens to be. That is the one secret that I think a lot of people, a lot of web developers and just business owners out there won't clearly say. And I'm going to say it again, try to educate people about your product, your service, your business, whatever it is that you can put out there and sprinkle out there to teach them a little bit about it. They're not going to rip off your product or your service and go do it themselves. Some might, but most people are like, wow, they taught me a little bit. I'm going to hire this person because I don't have the time to do this thing that they taught me a little bit about. So blog posts a lot of times could be and should be educational pieces of content that kind of lead to the purchasing of a product or the hiring of your services or whatever that might be. So think about it in the educational realm. If you're like, I'm not a blogger, I don't know what to do, teach people. So we can create a category on the fly. I can click that add new category, and I'm just going to call this news. We'll create one more called events. And I'm just creating these. These will then be available for all posts that get created in the future to be put into. Ideally, a post only lives in one category, but you can put it in multiple. Ideally, you want to like put it in the best category based on what it's all about. So in this case, I'm going to uncheck events and uncategorize, and we'll just leave this post in the category of news. These categories help both yourself organize your content, but also helps the world kind of dig through your content. It helps Google as well. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. You can also create parent categories. You can nest stuff down. So if we wanted to have like news and we wanted, you know, like local news, national news, international news, those could be subcategories underneath news. I'm going to minimize or kind of close this area right here and right here. Next on the docket here are tags. Tags are like little keywords. They're little identifying factors about the content that you've created. Some people really like to put those tags in first before they start writing the content because it helps kind of give them this like keyword roadmap. I don't do that. I craft the content first and then run through and pluck out the keywords and then add them over into the tag section. Let me pause for just a second, catch up on this chat. Tracy, I've never heard of a point of sale system populating into WordPress. So that might be a question I can help answer through an email. I'm curious about what's happening there. What might be happening is the point of sale is creating products, and we'll kind of get in a little bit to that piece as well. Green Geeks, going back to Carla, Green Geeks is a decent company. They're pretty good. Somebody earlier asked about another hosting company. Namecheap's not bad. Namecheap is kind of like entry-level hosting, kind of there with GoDaddy as well. A lot of these hosting companies, you can just pay to have like faster and better servers as well. Cool. Okay. So getting back to the tag section, they're keywords. Essentially, they're little identifying words that you want Google to pick up on and that you think people might Google. A user might, a visitor might Google, and you want your blog post to be found for that. This term landing page, whoever decided to just alter the term blog post and call it a landing page got away with it. Landing pages are just posts or pages. They're all the same thing. So whether you build your site out full of posts or full of pages or full of whatever you want to call your landing pages, they're all the same. You get to pick, do you want to drive traffic to this particular post or page about the topic? The topic is what Google cares about. There's a concept these days called an inch wide and a mile deep. And that concept is something that as Google has evolved their algorithm, they've said, we no longer want to see like 12 different pieces of content all about the same thing. We don't know where to send the traffic to. And so we're just not going to send it to any of them. And they're all competing because they're all on the same exact site. So the inch wide, mile deep concept is kind of hyper focus whatever that topic is, whether it's about a service or a product or an event or whatever it might be, and build out a really robust post or page that answers Google's question, that answers the visitor's question. Some people do this and have just a single page site that's really in depth into whatever that topic is, and that's totally fine to do. I don't have any content plugged in, so I'm just going to like arbitrarily kind of make up some keywords here. I do have a mock business that I created that I used to teach pre-camp with, and I'm a Volkswagen nut, and so it's an Asheville Volkswagen repair business that's not real. At least it's not mine. And so I do have like content and stuff that I'll populate into pages. And so I just want to scan through and see if I did have a list of any keywords. I do have some keywords plugged in here that I'll go ahead and grab just to show you guys how this works. So tags get created with their comma separated. So things like, again, I'm using the Asheville Volkswagen repair just as a mock business for this. So alignments, brakes, tires, things like that. Little independent words. They can be 2-3 word phrases. That's fine. Again, you separate the phrase with a comma. So 3 words, comma, next one. For categories, I kind of said, only one category per post. And that's mostly true. You can kind of squeeze a topic into a second category if you really need to. For tags, the rule that I generally lay out is 6 to 8 tags per post. And some of those tags should be reused. They should be tags that are on other posts already, or that you plan to use on other posts. So you want to kind of build this tag library and know that you're using these important tags to connect the dots between pieces of content. Again, you want to make sure that you're not, creating 12 pieces of content all about the same thing, but there are times when it's appropriate for these things to link to each other. And you do that by way of the tags. You guys probably remember back in the day, these like tag clouds that used to exist on sites for a while on like the sidebars, where a bunch of words kind of slammed into a space. Some words were bigger than others. Those bigger words were used on more pieces of content. More pieces of content had been tagged with that particular keyword. And then the last one on here is featured image. And I'm gonna go back. Featured image is always very important. I'm gonna go ahead and click on that. And I could either go look into the media library, which it's a brand new site, so there's nothing there yet. Or I can go and upload. And I've got a folder that I created. We're gonna pick out this cool little chopped Volkswagen here. So again, WordPress has a media manager built into it. You can upload directly into it. You don't need any other software. I'm going to talk for just a few minutes about images, and some best practices there. So the most important thing that I could tell you that helps with search engine optimization or SEO, name your images. Like, it seems simple, but nobody does it. Just name your images. Like, literally, like, name the file something that makes sense related to the image. So many people just like dump pictures out of their phone, out of their camera. It says DSC 09263.jpg. That means nothing to anybody, to you, to Google, to the users, nobody. So literally change the name of the file on your computer before you upload it to the website. Some of you that have websites, you're like, oh my God, I have so much work to do to go back through all those images. Don't stress too much about it, but just set it in stone. Like, this point moving forward, you're going to name the images. Over on the right-hand side of the screen here, I've got a little preview. I've got Asheville VW Repair Gallery 13 is the name of that image. I've got some stats about when it was uploaded, the size of the image. Sizes have happened in 2 ways. There's the kilobytes or the megabytes. That's kind of how heavy the images are. And then there's the pixel sizes. Pixel sizes are based on visually how big is it on the screen. 2 quick little things, and we're going to move on from images. About 100 to 150 kilobytes or below is kind of the max size that you want to use. This one is breaking that rule. This one's at 189 kilobytes, but 150 is kind of the max. If it's a big header image, you can get away with something a little bit bigger, but if you've got a gallery with 20 images and they're all a megabyte, you just crippled that page from loading on anybody's phone or desktop. And then as far as a max size on the pixel size, about 1,000 pixels, whether that's 1,000 wide or 1,000 tall, whatever the biggest dimension is, whether it's portrait or landscape. So 150 kilobytes, about 1,000 pixels. Alt text is very important. It is kind of one more opportunity to optimize the image and the page that it's showing up on. So you'd plug in some kind of statement there about what the actual image is. Helps you on Google big time. Title, caption, description, all of those, again, are like more opportunities to kind of pad in some keywords and kind of tell Google and tell the users what it's all about. Set featured image. All right, I'm going to go ahead and just drop a little bit of copy in here. This will help out later. And I'm going to go to Lorem Ipsum and just grab a little bit of Latin text. Lorem Ipsum is literally filler text that they came up with when they were testing fonts when they were working on the printing press. It goes back to like the 14 or 1500s. And so I'm going to add another thing here, another block, and this is going to get us into the block editor a little bit. And we're going to build out a little bit in this post, and then we're going to move on and do some other stuff. So this block editor, again, it's replaced the WYSIWYG, kind of, and I'll show you what I mean by that. And there are lots of different blocks. There are blocks based on whatever the end result ends up being. There's video blocks and text blocks and image blocks and all the different types of blocks that you might need. I'm going to click this browse all, and that's going to pull it over to the side and give me this block browser. And so I can scroll through and I can see there's a bunch of different text blocks down here. There's media blocks that are organized together. WordPress a couple years ago added this nice little pop-up preview, which is pretty cool. You can see what you're going to get, which is nice. Some of these I have never used once. Others I use constantly on every site. So in this case, what we're going to do is just grab the most simple one, which is a paragraph block. You can either drag it over or you can click on it and it will create a new block over here on the right. Notice now that because I've clicked into one of these blocks, this happens to be the paragraph block, the right-hand side of the screen over here has changed to this block tab. It tells me the type of block up at the top of it. And then I've got some settings to manipulate what it looks like. Color of the font, spacing, font itself, lots of different things. And so I'm going to come over here and just paste in that lorem ipsum. I'm going to hit return. That gives me the same block down below. I'm just going to do 2 paragraphs of lorem ipsum text. I want to do one more block just to kind of do something other than a boring text block, and then we're going to move on. So I clicked out of the text box, and that gives me this little plus sign. You can do that right here. You can also do that up here, up at the top left. I will point out that there are also, you're not limited to the blocks that are built into WordPress. You can go find plugins that just give you tons and tons and tons of different blocks. If you're building a podcast business, you can go find a plugin that specifically deals with like podcast blocks. There's thousands of them out there. The next one, though, that I wanted to pull in here is this media and text. It's kind of a cool layout, a little bit of layout, a little bit of content. Again, I'm going to click over here on the side, and I'm just going to call this, I'm going to say heading, and then I'm going to paste in that lorem ipsum and then trim it down so it fits a little bit better. And so this is, and the reason I picked this one is because it does kind of incorporate a bit of layout into it. And it's going to also show you guys that we can clone and kind of manipulate the layout of it. But then also it's 2 blocks in a block. So sometimes the nesting of blocks happens, and this is one of those examples. So I plugged in that content over on the right. Over here on the left, I'm going to say upload an image. I'm going to go and we'll grab this sweet Carmen Gia and plug it in there. So we're going to move on here in just a second, but I want to point out that, again, over on that right-hand side, we now have specific settings based on the fact that we have the image selected. Whereas if I click on the paragraph over here, it switches over to that. The next thing that I want to do here is I am going to click on these 3 little dots over on the right-hand side. This is vertical menu, and I'm just going to duplicate it. That's pretty cool that you can just clone an entire block. You can obviously do that with any type of block that you might want to do. So one of the pieces of advice that I give to people is if you know that you're going to be building out a page that's got a whole bunch of stuff, let's say you've got like 6 products or 6 ebooks or 6 services, and you want all of those things to look the same. Spend time on one of them and get it really dialed in. Get the heading, the colors, the layout, all that stuff, and then clone it, and then clone it, and then clone it, and then swap out all that content. Continuity within a website is one of the most important things. Unfortunately, it's why Flash went away back in the day, because like it was a train wreck to go to a Flash website and like the menus floating around and every page looks different. I miss those days, but they're gone for a reason. And so one of the things I can do now is I can just click a toggle here and it flip-flops the image with the text side to side. So this is a really cool way that you can stair step and stagger content as you go down a page. So we'll duplicate it one more time. Oops. Let's duplicate that one more time and then swap it. So this little waterfall effect you'll probably see a lot of times on sites where kind of visually like pulls the user down through your content. Okay, we're going to move on from this one post. I'm going to go ahead and at the top right, I'm going to click update. There are a few other things that are some little menu items up here. One of them is kind of pop out this post into its own window. We can see what it's going to look like on desktop. tablet, and mobile, which is pretty cool. So we can actually see how stuff kind of stacks down as it goes into these different views. The other option is you can say, hey, show this in a new window, and then we could just squeeze the browser window down, and that would kind of do the same thing. I will point out that, so now that we're on the front side of the site, this is what that post looks like on the front. And what's significant about that is that the featured image gets put up there huge, which we might not like. That'll change once we start working with changing the theme around. So we're not going to worry too much about that right now. But in this theme, the featured image gets put as big as it can be and right up top, followed by the post title, and then any content that we plugged into that post. And then down here at the bottom, we've got some details. And again, this is specific to the theme. The placement of this stuff and whether it even shows or not is specific to the theme that we're using. So in this theme, we've got the author. We've got posted by me on a particular date in the category of news. It's been tagged with alignments, brakes, and tires. And then we've got this one comment down here at the bottom. When we were going through the tags and the categories, I mentioned that, this is helpful for you as the author and owner of the site, but it's also helpful for Google and for site users. And what I meant by that is that every time, I'm going to say this a couple different times, a few different ways. Every time you create a category or a tag, WordPress automatically creates a page. I say that with quotes because it's not like a page that you can go find, but it automatically creates a page in the system that Google can direct traffic to, or that can show up in search engines. So in this case, if I click on news, I'm going to hold down the control key so it opens in a new window. That just took me to the category of news. And if we had more postings in here, they'd get laid out however this theme decides to lay them out. Likewise with tags, I click on that and it brings up the tag page, all about alignments. So these different pages, whether you want it to or not, get created every time you create a tag and every time you create a category. This is super important if it's not just you managing the website or the blog and you've got other people in the mix, to make sure that if you're like, hey, we're going to use tags and here's what we're going to use, they're all going to be capitalized or they're not, or you're going to use camel case or you're not. Like, you come up with a SOP, a standard operating procedure around like how the content's created so that somebody's not putting in tags all lowercase and somebody's using case sensitive as well. Continuity again. I'm going to close these. We'll come back to it and we'll see like what that page looks like once we have a few more pieces of content. Since we got down here and there is a comment turned on, I'm going to show you now how to go into the settings and turn comments off. Comments are dangerous. Comments can get your site hacked. Comments might show up and you didn't plan on that, and they could just be bogus bots that are just dropping comments in. But it can be a big vulnerability for you and for the site. Bots a lot of times will try to publish a comment into a post, and if it's set to auto publish, that opens the door for them to then continue to throw comments to the tune of like malicious scripts and stuff that they can put in there. So comments can be dangerous. If you want to use commenting, a lot of times people link in Facebook and they'll use like a integration with Facebook to let conversation happen on Facebook, and it aggregates it over to the site. So I'm going to leave this open. I'm going to jump back to this first tab. I'm going to get things back to how they looked before. Update is grayed out because we haven't made any changes. And at this point, I'm going to click on this WordPress logo at the top left. This is going to bring us back to the dashboard and to the post screen. And I'm just going to very quickly make one more post. I open that in a new tab, but before I do that, I want to show you this discussion. So settings, discussion. And this is where we're going to turn off comments. This also might be something that you want to take a screenshot of or just like jot a couple notes down, because I'm going to do a couple very specific things to lock down comments from the very get-go so that as we create content moving forward, we're not having to go back in and turn off comments on everything. So I'm going to uncheck allow people to submit comments on new posts. It's that third one. I'm going to check these next two down here. Users must be registered and logged in to comment. And all of these are like a little redundant, but it's good to lock it down this way. Automatically close comments on posts older than 0 days from the get-go, just close comments. And then comments must be manually approved. That is probably the most important and most significant one. If it's not set to manually approve them, then there's ways that they can like automatically push those comments through. And I'm gonna go all the way down to the bottom and save changes. I think if I go back over here and refresh, I don't think anything's gonna change because we didn't delete the comment. And that post was created prior to me making those changes. So we would have to go in and like ditch this content and clean that up. But we're not going to go live with a hello world post anyway. So, all right, one more post. This one's going to be called the VW event. Just so I want to show you guys a gallery block. I'm going to click on a block. You can also just use this little search box right here. And if I start typing, I can see we've got a gallery block that shows up right there. I'm going to upload. And I'm going to grab all of those images and hopefully not cripple the load time of this right now. So I said Control A to select all those images and just click upload them. And we can watch. That actually went pretty quickly. Some of that's because this is on Kinsta. And also the images have been squished down and kind of sized appropriately. So now we've got this gallery layout over here. We've got some settings over here on the right as far as things like the aspect ratio of the images and how to manipulate those. We can choose the width and the height of the different images if we want. Ideally, you'd have all the same either portrait or landscapes for every one of them. You've sized them already, hopefully. And let's see here. You can also go into an individual image. You can change the order here. You can do alt tagging. You can do all the same things. So I'm going to click outside to get this to jump back over to the post settings screen. I'm going to go put this back into events. I think the last one was in news. I'm going to put it in both, and we'll just so that we can have two posts in one category is what I'm trying to get at here. And then we get down to the tag section. We've got alignments, brakes, tires. I'm going to do that's a little long for a tag, but I wanted to at least put something in there that's kind of built out a bit. And then I'll also just click tires as well, loop it into two. And then the featured image, in this case, we're going to use this Herbie bug and set the featured image. That was pretty quick, but again, the end goal that I'm trying to show you here is when I publish this, we're going to go look at the front and we're going to see that layout that's now been stacked up on the category and the tag page. So I'm going to click publish at the top right. There's this like little intermediate step here that's like, whoa, are you sure you want to publish? And typically you say, yeah, I click publish, I want to publish. There are these two last little things that says, hey, this is going to be public. Everybody can see this once it goes live. And then should it get published right now? And this is where you can set a future time if you want it to publish in the future. And then down here at the bottom, there's this checkbox that I always uncheck because the second step is annoying. When I click publish, I want it to just publish. So that is always show pre-published checks. So I uncheck that one. And we'll publish. I'm going to go view this post. Looks exactly like that other one did, but just with different stuff. I didn't set it so that when you click on a thumbnail, it does anything, but you can do that. Again, there's like 6 or 7 different styles. You can say, just zoom in on that one photo, set it up as a gallery where you can arrow through left and right. There's a lot of different settings based on how you configure that. And if I go to the news page, that's what we get. There's no text pulled in there because it's just a gallery block that we've added. And so that'll probably do 3 total, and then it'll bump down to the next level. Questions on posts, tags, categories, featured images, any of that stuff before we roll? We're at about the hour mark. We catch up on chat while some of you are thinking about any questions. Tracy, I see your update on this thing. Yeah, so the point of sale system that you guys are using are pushing products into WooCommerce. That's kind of like the one scenario that I was thinking could be the case. WooCommerce is what turns WordPress into an e-commerce platform. It is one of the plugins that we'll look at, although we can't dig too deep into it. Although next Wednesday, I'm teaching an e-commerce class through Blue Ridge Community College, and then the following week, I teach another e-commerce class through AB Tech. So there's 2 in the next 2 weeks, specifically on WordPress and WooCommerce. All right, no questions from anybody on this. We're gonna keep moving. We're gonna go jump over and go into the pages section, and you're gonna see that this is almost identical. It is identical, minus the tags, categories, and featured images. Pages just don't have those 3 things, but they are set up exactly the same in every other way. We can take a look at their sample page and just see, but they've got basic paragraph text block up top. This one is going to be a it's a paragraph block, but it's just set to be in quotes, so it kind of bumps it in like that, and then a couple more paragraph blocks. So there's really nothing here. I'm going to go in and just up top, I'm going to say add new. While I'm doing this, I want to point out the fact that there is a new button up top here. New post, new media, new page, new user. So I could click new page right there, or I could click new page right there. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to reference this Word document that I've got over here, and I'm going to paste some content over. So it took me a long time of building websites to realize that every website's the same. They all have a home page, an about page, a services page, a gallery page, and a contact page. Sometimes you have products. Sometimes you have testimonials. Sometimes you have reviews instead of testimonials, but they all have the same 5 pages, or 6 or 7 or 25, doesn't really matter. But ultimately, like home, about, services, gallery, contact is kind of what you're looking at. Again, they can grow and grow and grow, and you can have 45,000 pages on your site, and that's totally up to you. But you kind of need the bare bones minimum of like those 5 pages. Whether you call it home or welcome is completely up to you. So I'm going to just paste in this content, and we're going to see how well it is received from Word. So I'll drag over what I'm looking at here so you guys have an idea of what this is doing. So I've got this Word document that I built out. It's got a whole bunch of content separated out by these horizontal lines, random stuff that I just kind of made up as if I was actually starting a Volkswagen repair business. That'll be my retirement plan, I guess. I don't know. So I pasted this in, and it actually did a pretty good job. It created a paragraph block up top, and it's spotting the paragraph breaks in Word and saying, hey, that's another paragraph block. That's another paragraph block. So it created that one, that one, that one, and all the way down the list. And I also went ahead and created the bulleted list again that came over from Word. One of the things that I didn't say as a disclaimer, I'll say it now. Definitely one of the goals in this is not to build, in this class, is not to build a good looking site. That ain't gonna happen. Like, we're gonna finish this 2 hours and this is gonna be hideous. Okay. It takes a long time to not only get the content together, style and name all the images, get it all uploaded, organized, and have some level of like, oh, that actually looks pretty good. It's like 40 hours, best case scenario, even if you know what you're doing. Okay, so I hate to like pop a bubble where people are like, I'm gonna have a site done in a day. You might have something done in a day, but to have a site that you're like super proud of and ready to publish and drive a lot of traffic to, it's really difficult to do that in like less than a handful of days, even if you kind of can move around WordPress. So this thing ain't gonna look great when we're done, but that's not the goal. The goal is to kind of go through the nuts and bolts and the settings and all that kind of stuff. I will at this time go ahead and I'm going to put in a cover block. And I'll go to the, I'll go ahead and upload, and I'm going to grab this cool looking BW on the Parkway. So this cover block, it's basically just a big old image. But the cool thing about it is you can stretch it out and you can make it what's called like a hero image. And so you can come in here and this It kind of looks like the hamburger menu, little line, big fat line, little line. When you see that on a mobile menu, that's the hamburger menu, is why they call that. So that's kind of a hamburger menu. And so we could do make it wider, or we could say make it full width and go all the way across. We can also come down over here on the right-hand side and we can shift the focal point a little bit if we want to. There's a little text box right here in the center. It's a little hard to see, but I'll go ahead and put in a little bit of text there. We can come over here on the side and we can change the color of it. We can change the positioning of it. The other thing I'll show you here is that we can drag the block and we can move it up top. Might need to scroll up a little bit. And we'll drag that up top. And we can kind of have a nice little intro, then gets down into the content. So that's kind of the extent of the styling to try to make this thing look halfway decent that I'll do. But that cover block is pretty cool. And there's a number of blocks in the system, mostly image related, that will let you do that, what's called a full bleed. So full bleed is a term they use in the print world to do like full bleed to the edge of a business card or letterhead or whatever it is, or rat card. Same term exists in the web world, full bleed, run all the way to the edges. This has become kind of the primary design method for laying out content on websites these days because it's really responsive. Responsive means that the website responds to the device. If I pull it up on my phone, it's going to recognize it's on a phone and it's going to squish it down. And so full bleed is a really good responsive element. I am going to click out here. I did say something slightly incorrect earlier, and that was that pages don't have featured images. They do actually have this featured image block over here on the side, but they're rarely ever used. Featured images are almost always used for postings, like we saw, but for pages, we rarely ever see a featured image that gets like pulled in and shown anywhere. You can set it, but I don't think it actually does anything. Again, that is going to be theme specific. So at this point, I'm going to pick up the pace a little bit, unless anybody doesn't want me to do that. But I'm going to pop out a couple pages. We're going to build a menu, and we're going to have like the bare bones of a website. And then we're going to dig into plugins and themes. It's unfortunate that when I used to teach this class in person, it was 3 hours, which is a lot. When they stole an hour from me, everything, like you can't purge some stuff out of it. So it all just got kind of crushed into 2 hours. So there may be some questions that I need to answer through email afterwards. I can also hang on after 5 if anybody has specifics. So I'm literally going to just like blast through and build out a whole bunch of pages real quick. So ask questions if you want, but I'm just going to narrate as I do this. I'm going to hold the control key and click this 3 or 4 times. All that does, holding control key and then clicking on a link, opens up a new tab. Probably command on a Mac, but on every PC, hold control, click on a link, open a new tab. I now have 4 brand new tabs, brand new pages. I'm going to come down here, and this next one is going to be about us. Again, call it about us, call it about me, call it whatever you want to call it. Publish. Services. Publish. Testimonials. There is a testimonial block that you can go get. I'm sure there's tons of them that make them look even better. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to post that in there. And last one on here, contact. Okay. We just popped out 5 pages there. And then there's one more page that I'm going to make, but we're not going to put any content on it. So I'm going to come over here, click on the WordPress logo. I'm going to add one more page. I'm going to call this the blog page. And we're not going to paste any content. I'll show you why in just a minute here. I'm going to close these out. We don't need them. We've got them all published. They're all good to go. I'm going to refresh on the pages page. About, blog, contact. privacy policy does get automatically created for you in WordPress, which is great. That's as of a couple years ago. You're going to have to clean it up and like fill in the blanks, but it's there, and it's maybe not legally binding. I don't know. It's a starting point. Sample page, I'm going to trash. And so that gives us our list. So we've got welcome, testimonial, services, contact, blog, and about. Now I'm going to go to the front of the website, and we're going to look and see the fact that like nothing has really changed in the sense that we've got some menu items up top, but they're not in the right order. And it still doesn't pull in our homepage. We're going to go back now to that screen that we looked at early on, where we're going to change from that drop-down menu, and we're going to say, this is not a blog, this is a website. So I'll leave this homepage open. I'll jump back over here. I'm going to go down to the reading under settings. And your homepage displays a static page, and that page is the welcome page. This is the drop-down that you say, hey, WordPress, it's a website, not a blog, first and foremost. And this is the page that should load when somebody goes to my homepage, whether they go to the domain name or the test domain name, or they click your logo. You're saying, hey, this is what I want the homepage to be. And then this posts page, which is a weird terminology, but it is what it is. You're saying, I want all my blog posts to get pointed to and populate on this particular page. So again, if you're like, oh, I'm not a blogger, I'm not going to blog, I'm going to reiterate the fact that try to figure out how to be educational and helpful to people. And so call it news, call it FAQs, frequently asked questions, call it whatever you want to call it. Create some page that catches your posts and try your hardest to create like a couple posts, even if it feels a little foreign. ChatGPT these days, OpenAI.com is changing the game. And if you haven't experienced it or jumped in at all, you should. And it's scary how quick and easy it is to spit out a blog post on any topic that you can think of. That's probably better than what most of us would actually be able to write. And it does it in like 6 seconds. So I'm not encouraging everybody to go start spitting out blog posts with ChatGPT, but a lot of people are doing it right now. That's all I'm going to do on here. I'm going to, I set the static page. I set these two drop downs, and I'm going to say save changes. And I'm going to go back to this next tab, refresh. And now we have that beautiful bug on the Parkway homepage. I built that bug when I was 16 years old. The next thing that I want to do is this, surprisingly, it pulled in all the pages into the menu. I didn't think it was going to do that. And I don't know when this changed. That might be based on this theme. Normally, you make all these pages and you publish them, and there's nothing in the menu. There's no menu yet at all. And so that's what the next thing is that we're going to do is we've made a couple posts, we've made a couple pages. We now want to make a menu and then organize that menu the way that we want it. So interesting. They have removed this. I'm glad this happened. They have removed menus from underneath appearance. Again, this is probably specific to the theme. So when we change the theme, we might get menus coming back in the mix here, unless they've just arbitrarily put it somewhere else. So if any of you out there have a WordPress site, you probably have a few additional items underneath appearance, one of them being menus. So we're going to skip that step for a second, which is okay because we already have a menu, but it's not in the order that I want it to be in. That's okay. We click through. There's our about page. I'll hold off on blog for a second. There's our contact page, services page, testimonial page, and back to the welcome page. Typically the order is going to be, and this is, I say this not just from experience building sites, but what I see in analytics, Google Analytics, the ordering of your pages typically should be your home page first. Sometimes people don't even have home in their menu. They just have the logo linked to their home, which is fine. About next. People want to land at your homepage. They want to figure out who they're dealing with. Next would be services. What do you do? Or services or products. Followed by typically blog, followed by contact. Contact at the end, welcome at the beginning, about right after. So. All right, we're moving right along here. I'm going to add a note on my menus note. Doesn't exist anymore. or at least it's in a different spot. We're going to change the theme here in a second. We'll see if it shows back up. All right, next on the list is actually plugins, but I want to briefly just check and see. And I'm gonna flip this. We're gonna do themes real quick, not real quick, but next, and then we're gonna dig into plugins after that. So I did mention that there's just a few things that I did do before you all hopped on here. I loaded some plugins, which we'll look at after themes, and I loaded one theme. It's called Divi. And if we have time at the end, I'm going to show you how to like ignore everything that I've just taught you as far as creating pages and content and dealing with the block editor, and show you how you can spin up a really, really, really good looking website in about 5 or 6 minutes with like no coding or no design skills whatsoever. And we're going to do that using Divi, which is a whole separate class. And I do a 2-hour class just on Divi, and it's a great theme, but we're going to do that in like 5 minutes. The current active theme is the 2023 theme. We see that right down here at the bottom. My guess is if I go into this customizer, we'll find like a door that gets us to the menu section. I'll go ahead and click that and see. Navigation. So they have this theme specifically has kind of hijacked the menu, and they've now moved it over to this navigation area right here. And this is where we can just rearrange this menu. This is cool. This is the very first time I've ever seen this. Oh, and it thought I needed to nest that, and I do not want to nest that. I'm just dragging and dropping these things. Set testimonials we could. So you see how that little blue line jumps? I can nest it down and it pulls that in. And now we've got this live preview up here that's showing us what's going on. That's cool. Anyway, we're gonna go back to the theme section. And we're gonna start going back through the different themes. So I wanna make sure I have at least a page open, the home page for this theme that we're on, 2023. I'm gonna activate 2022. That active theme now becomes the first block. I'm gonna hold down Control. I'm gonna click on the name up at the top, and that's gonna open up another tab with the home page now wrapped with 2022, totally different theme. And we can now see the difference. And this is the main reason why I plug just a bit of content in on all these different pages, is so that we can see the layout. That text right there went back to black. Nothing really else changed a whole lot. Our menu got a little bit messed up. That might be because I didn't save it. That blog page, in this case, the blog page does this, that top level. And then we could click on one of these and go down into that particular post. So this is what the post looks like in this 2022 theme. These are all just going to be very straightforward. They add this one little horizontal line design element. And we'll go back to the home page. And now I'm going to activate 2021. And all I'm trying to do here is just show you the fact that, it just rewraps our content with whatever the new look and feel is. So this one's got this weird looking greenish color. It's got a little bit of looks like a little bit of a parallax on that top image maybe. And our menu's disappeared. So now in this case, with this theme active, my guess is this 2021 theme brought back those menu items, which is what I kind of expected to see. And I expected to go in and see menus. And this is what I was going to show you. And so I'm going to show you anyway, because chances are whatever theme you pick is not going to hijack and change it. You'll get what I'm seeing right here. So I want to walk through this. So we're going to create a menu, call it main menu. I'm going to say, yes, this is the primary menu. And now I need to populate the menu with the pages that I want and then put them in the order that I want them in. So I've got pages, posts, custom links, and categories. So I'm going to go say I want to view all the pages and I want to select them all. I'm going to add them to the menu, and then I'm just going to drag these around and put them in the order that I want. I'm going to do that little bump in for the testimonials, and we've got that going there. So I'll save it and go back to this third one and refresh, and we should get a menu. Yay. with a little hover state and a drop down because it's a nested child item. Okay. The next thing I want to do is we're going to add a new theme. So, sorry, I'm going to jump back. I didn't narrate as I did that. Up top on the appearance themes screen, there's this add new button. And this is kind of a gateway into the WordPress theme library. All of these themes that show up right here, there's 5,892 of them under this popular tag or latest or block themes, whatever you might pick. These are all going to be free themes. We can pick one at random. We'll do that in just a second, and we'll install it. It's going to download a fresh copy of it. You get what you pay for with themes and plugins. It's a free theme. You probably don't get any support if you can't figure it out. It might just break, and that just is what it is. It might crash your website. Probably not, but it could. Themes are worth paying for a lot of times. Once you've kind of figured out WordPress, figured out this is what you want to do, go kind of hunt around and try to find a theme that you really like and like the look of. We're exclusive Divi. We've been building on Divi for 8 years since it came out. But it's like a $90 yearly fee to keep that theme. So I'm going to pick this Astra theme at random, and I'm going to say install. It grabbed a fresh copy. It pulled it down. Now I'm going to click on activate. And now it has wrapped this site with this new theme. Again, I'm going to hold control, click on the name, and this is pretty boring as well. We'll do that one more time and see if we can find a slightly more interesting theme. Let's do this one, this Ocean WP. Some themes come pre-packaged with like demo content. This may or may not be one. Does give us a little bit of instruction here. It says, hey, you need to install and activate some stuff. Let's just see what this does. Still very boring. We'll do this one more time. Add one more theme. Let's do this one right here. There is a feature filter up at the top that you can use. It's just like took over and launched us into something. So we'll skip setup and see what happens. That changed some stuff. We'll drag this down to the end. This is the last one. It's got this big, massive hero image. That's kind of a cool little, it's transparent before you started to scroll. On scroll goes to white. Little drop shadow below, big old hero image that I would obviously move my bug shot up into. Real clear title up front, call to action to go in and do something. We've got, it's a little hard to look at, but we've got what's called a parallax going on, where we've got text sitting on top of an image back behind it. And as we scroll, it acts as like two different planes. That's called parallax. We've got a little blog section that automatically got pulled in, and it found our 2 blog posts and it put them there with a little drop shadow. Looks all right. If there was 3, maybe it would do 3 columns, or it would just archive and push the 3rd somewhere. And then we've got a footer, again, with that same city scene, but not parallax, and it's kind of fixed. So that's not bad, Questions on theme selection. You can get lost for like days in the theme world. Yeah, any questions on themes? Okay. I think there's like 150,000 themes out there.
I have a quick question about themes.
Yep.
Would it make sense to make a theme before you put in all this content? Would it make sense to pick a theme first before putting in content to make sure it matches with the theme?
That's a really, really good question. I typically say no, but I'm going to tell you why, and then you kind of decide on your own. And the reason why I say no is because I've had people come to Big Boom Design, and they're like, I'm starting a business. I want to do WordPress. I got my WordPress site set up, and I bought this theme. I'm like, cool. Do you have any content yet? I'm like, no. I'm like, okay. So now they're in a spot where they're paying for hosting, they're paying for their domain name, they paid for this theme, they haven't started working on content yet. And a lot of times what happens is the amount and the type and the style and the layout of the content has already been predetermined by that theme. meaning this theme has like these different spots and these different things and these different features. And then all of a sudden you're trying to build that based on the theme and not based on your business goals or what you want to do and the amount of and the type of copy and content that you might want to create. So, I mean, I always try to tell people, like, again, before you even get the domain name or set anything up, like, you know, work on a document very similar to this and like get your stuff figured out. And, you know, it's like, okay, I've got, you know, homepage, about page, service page. I got 6-7 pages. I'm going to do a blog section. These are going to be the categories and like kind of build the framework. And ideally plug stuff in, because then you can flip through and you can see what your content's going to look like we just did, in those different themes. Whereas if you pick a theme and load it on there, unless there's demo or dummy content that's preloaded that you go and like switch out the lorem ipsum and switch out the stock photos and all that kind of stuff, you can't really see exactly what it's going to look like. Sometimes these theme companies, they do have like a demo site that you can go and look at, but there's probably been a lot of work done to make that demo look really badass. And you may or may not get like instructions to make it look just like that demo site looked. I don't know, that kind of answers the question. You can do it either way.
Yes, it did. Thanks.
Cool. I want to shift over to plugins. It's 4:30. We got 30 minutes. I want to do plugins, and then I want to jump back to the theme, and we're going to look at Divi, and I'm going to build out 5 pages real quick. And then we should have enough time at the end to talk about backups and updates, which are 2 very important things, and that security is going to be wrapped up in that as well. And then hopefully 5 to 8 minutes for questions at the end. If you do have any questions, maybe now throw them in there so I can try to figure out how much time to reserve for that. But we're going to shift over to plugins now. I kind of like this, whatever theme this was. This was Estia. Okay, I'm going to jump down to plugins. And I have already loaded a handful of plugins into the mix. I did this so that as I'm talking through these things, if you wanted to take a screenshot or write some of these things down, you can do that and you're not like frantically trying to do that. These are in no way like mandatory plugins at all. Typically, actually, when you load a WordPress site, there's either no plugins or sometimes there's 1 plugin, sometimes 2 plugins. And those 2 plugins that kind of get prepackaged and loaded with WordPress a lot of times is this very first one, Akismet. This is a plugin that's actually built by Automatic, which is the parent company of WordPress. And it helps cut down on spam. If you close comments and you take some kind of basic precautions to just kind of lock it down a little bit, you don't really have to worry too much about that. But if you are going to have kind of an active blog and you do want to allow comments to come in, I encourage you to use Akismet or something similar to kind of harden the site a little bit and keep the bots at bay, I guess. I will also point out that just because it happens to be right here, as plugins need updating, those will show up both right here. If you hover over dashboard, there's an update screen there, but they also show up on the plugin screen and on the theme screen. So plugins and themes. Sorry, there's a bird in here now. Sorry about that. So I'm going to go ahead and run this little update. We can click update now. And that was a real quick, easy, light plugin and just grab that new version. Again, we'll definitely talk about updates and backups at the very, very end. But so Akismet I left in here. We rarely use it, but we rarely do blog site builds. We manage some of them, but we typically build websites. The other one that is preloaded is this Hello Dolly plugin. And it's not actually a plugin. It's literally just like that Hello World sample page. Hello Dolly, it's just kind of like a dummy plugin. So you can always just delete that Hello Dolly plugin. The classic editor, I'm going to go ahead and activate this. And then I want to go open up a page and I'll show you what this does. So with that classic editor plugin turned on, it hides or suppresses the block editor and gives you this old school WYSIWYG layout back. I can click on this little last button, and this is going to be, they used to call this the kitchen sink. It said show or hide the kitchen sink, which is way cuter of a name than toggle, toolbar toggle, which is hard to say. But that turns on that second row, which gives you the ability to change the color of the font and some other options that you probably won't really need. But that classic editor is one out there that they produced because there was so much backlash about like what happened to our WYSIWYG, bring it back. So they made a plugin to do that. Next down on this list is the redirection plugin. This is great for creating little redirects. That's not super needed all the time, but as a site grows, especially if there's a lot of people that are like active on the site and people
I
are
don't mean to.
publishing content, it will let you identify that and then redirect it to wherever it needs to go. So if you unpublish a piece of content, Google's like, whoa, that's an error 404, which we've all seen. Where should the traffic go that we were sending to this page? And you should help them with that redirect. The redirection plugin will also keep track of your error 404s, page not found, and then lets you see how often people are actually hitting those pages or those posts. A lot of times people do this with events. They'll create a post for the event's over, they unpublish it, that traffic's still pointed to it, keywords are still pointed to it. You should do something with it. SiteKit, some of these plugins, when I turn them on, they'll give us some guidance, and those are quality plugins. The plugins that you turn on and you're just like, I don't know what happened, where it went, what I do next, that just kind of leave you guessing. Not to say that those are all bad ones, but it's way nicer if they say like, here's what you do next. SiteKit is a really cool plugin that is made by Google in collaboration with WordPress that helps link in Google Search Console, Google Analytics, Google AdSense, and Google AdWords. So it kind of automatically, all in this one plugin, like connects the dots with all those services to your website. Way easier than going and grabbing different plugins to do all of those different connections. Smush is a plugin built by a pretty cool company called WPMU Dev, and Smush smushes your images down. So especially if you've been building out a site, or if you've had a site for a while, guarantee you've got images on there that are way too big, that weren't optimized, they're taking up too much space on your server, all that kind of stuff. Smush, you can load and run it, and it'll go through and find all of your images that are too big. I can actually go ahead and just open this up right here. I'll show you. And we've got very little images, very few images in there. I'm just going to click next, 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 and then it's going to scan. Let's say recheck. It found 18 images, and I can say bulk smush, and it's going to churn through those images and like optimize them down. This is not a replacement for actually naming and sizing your images. It's a band-aid approach, but it does a decent job. There's a pro paid version of that as well. I meant to mention that earlier. Plugins and themes a lot of times fall into what we call the freemium model. It's a free plugin or a free theme that has a premium level to it. So freemium, give it to them for free, limit the features, and then sell them the advanced, pro version of it. Smush is one of those. There's a few others in here like that. WooCommerce, I'm going to skip for just a second because that's going to like launch us into the whole WooCommerce setup, which I don't want to get too distracted with. WordFence is a really good, probably the top WordPress security plugin out there. This one does, if you turn it on, it does make you register with them. So you'll have to go and you have to get a license. It is free, but you can say, get your WordFence license, and then it bumps you over here. You choose the free option. Yes, I want the free option. You plug in your email address in the website, and it will make this little handshake, and then it'll run WordFence. WordFence is really cool because it does a number of things. Let's see if I can just bypass this. Yeah. WordFence keeps an eye on all the files that make up WordPress, and if any of them get changed and shouldn't be, it spots it. And it's like, that's different from what's in the public repository. Why? And so it'll help call out if your site's hacked or getting hacked. Also, you can run scans on it. You can set aspects about login, limiting login attempts. You can do a lot of stuff. It'll also give you the ability to like unhack your site sometimes. depending on how badly it's ripped apart. Yoast. Yoast is the top #1 SEO search engine optimization plugin. It doesn't do a whole lot right out of the box. It does a little bit to kind of help fix some just stuff that WordPress should probably fix anyway in the core. And they do have a pro version that kind of unlocks some other features, but it's a great kind of baseline for just optimizing pages and posts. And yeah, it's pretty good. Let me catch up on a couple of these comments here. Let me go back to the plugin screen. The Woo and Divi class. The Woo class is basically if you see e-commerce, and at the very end, I'll grab the dates of those. One's next week, and then one's the following week. Next week, Wednesday, I believe, at Blue Ridge Community College, virtual, and then the following week is with AB Tech, and it's on their AB Tech calendar website. And then the plugins, all of these plugins that I've gone through are all free. Yes, at least the base level of the plugin. As we just saw, like that Wordpress, you got to go get that license key, but it's still free. And there are paid versions of Smush, WordFence, and Yoast all have paid versions. And then with WooCommerce is free, but then all the little add-ons to do all the different things, shipping and payment and all the complex stuff that go into e-commerce, all of those little add-ons you have to pay for. Different amounts. They're not crazy expensive, but they're yearly $29 to $79 a year to do different things. It's still in the end cheaper than going to Shopify and using all of their add-ons to build out considerably. I've got a buddy of mine that pays $3,000 a month to Shopify just to like run his site for all the add-ons that he has, abandoned carts and all different types of things. And then, yeah, okay, we got through this. So the last one on here is going to be WooCommerce. I'm going to activate it. We're not going to dig into this because again, this is like the jump off point for the entire class next week and the week after. But we'll at least kind of take a look and see what it does. So welcome to Woo. And so at one point, WooCommerce was a theme. The company Woo built a theme that was like, hey, here, if you want to turn your WooCommerce website into an e-commerce site, use our theme. And it's got it all built in there. And they gained some popularity. And then a lot of people were like, I'm not going to change my theme just to do this. Like I've spent a lot of time and money and I built my site out. I just want the e-commerce capability. So they were really smart about this. They kind of extracted and pivoted and they went and they created a plugin. And that's when the WooCommerce plugin got created. It continued to grow and grow and grow. And then at some point, Automatic went to them and said, y'all are crushing it. Here's a lot of money. Keep doing your thing. You're part of us now if you want that to happen. So Automatic acquired WooCommerce as part of WordPress. And now it's owned and run by the same company, which is great. They got to, invest a lot of money and development talent into it, and it's really taken off. Cheapest hosting site for a DIY nonprofit organization. Cheapest hosting out there is probably going to be probably GoDaddy. Actually, probably like $6-7 a month. GoDaddy. Bluehost might be there as well, pretty cheap. Bluehost is actually a really good WordPress hosting company. They weren't for a long time. They really stepped it up and have focused a lot of attention towards WordPress security and updates and things like that. They're pretty knowledgeable. So anyway, that was my little Woo spiel. Set up my Woo store. We can walk through these different questions. Woo does a great job of onboarding you. Again, we're not going to dig super deep and like set up products and all this kind of stuff, but I'll just work through what these are. I'm going to say I'm setting the store up for a client. What's the name? What's the industry? Where is it located? There's these different add-ons that it wants you to like loop in to do various things. So WooCommerce now has its own payment gateway. A lot of times we use either PayPal or Stripe or both. And I'll just go through and kind of uncheck these. Jetpack is a plugin that some of you may have heard of. I'm not a huge fan of it. Jetpack is also built by Automatic, and it's like 20 or 30 plugins all in one, which some of those are kind of cool features. But there's plugins out there that do that feature and do it way better. And so for instance, forms, like contact forms and surveys and stuff like that, we use Gravity Forms. It's a paid plugin, but it's the best. Jetpack lets you build out like a little contact form, but it's not good. It just doesn't, there's a lot of reasons why it's just like not good. And that's true about a lot of like the pieces in Jetpack. It does a lot of stuff and it does too many things kind of half-assed. Whereas there's a plugin out there that does that thing really well, and that's all that it does. So that's kind of why I don't really use Jetpack. MailPoet for linking in with emails and newsletters. I don't really know that one that well. MailChimp and Constant Contact are obviously the two popular ones. Automated tax rates, that's a great one to leave on because taxes are horrible. And if it figures it out for you and keeps it all up to date, that is great. Print shipping labels, that's a good one. Again, these are like little add-ons that we might have to go and connect to. Pinterest, I'm shocked to see that they've got a Pinterest add-on in here, but it's their call. And then drive sales with Google listings and ads. I'm going to uncheck that one as well. So this automated tax one is really the only one that I would leave checked, for me at least. And it's running through and it's doing some stuff and it's finding tax rates and it's pulling all this in. And then it dumps you onto the screen, which is really, really helpful. And this is what I used as my roadmap when I teach the e-commerce class, because they've done a really good job of stair-stepping you through this process. Do all the settings first, add a product next, link up payments, figure out taxes, figure out shipping, and kind of work your way through. E-commerce is complex, very. It doesn't have to be, but a lot of times it's a way bigger thing than I think people make it out to be. Shopify is super easy. You jump on there and you like within minutes, you can just have a thing set up and running, but you're tied to them. And it's based in the amount that you pay is based on how many products you have. They take a bigger cut. There's a lot of factors where you're not necessarily in complete control of your own store. So I've been a huge fan of WooCommerce and WordPress for a long time. The Google, Katie asked, why did I get rid of the Google optimization piece? That was actually not really an optimization piece. That little last bottom right one, that was an automatic syndication or integration with Google Ads. But you do that at Google Ads. I don't know even why exactly they're trying to kind of create a conduit through. I'll dig back into that and see if it is worthwhile to add into the mix. The one thing that I thought that might be trying to do is push your products from your store into the Google shopping feed. But again, that's a very complex process. And a lot of times in these classes, I uncheck stuff just so that it doesn't like derail and take us way down a path that most people don't care about. And sometimes it like pushes the site to a point where we can't like undo that thing. So that's all I got on Woo. It does create a couple items over here on the side. It creates WooCommerce and then products. This is where all your products would be. Again, if you're interested in this part of it, come back next week. Same time, same place. Maybe I'll check on that. And that leaves us now down to themes. Back into the theme world. And what I want to do is activate Divi. I want to thank everybody for hanging in for an hour and 48 minutes. I promise we're getting at the end here. And then I got to go let this little bird out. It's stressing me out that he's just like banging his head on this window over here. I don't know how I got in. But anyway, Divi. Crash course on Divi. I'm going to go shut down all these other tabs. We've looked at them all. We don't need them. And I'm going to refresh the homepage. And it's going to look as bland and boring as it was before. But this is Divi. And I'll show you why Divi is actually really, really cool. And in the process of this, what I'm going to do is one more thing as far as how to jump between the front and the back side. Notice now that we're on the welcome page. And now up at the top, it says edit page. This is a nice, quick little hint at what type of content we're dealing with. What I mean is if I go to blog, and I go to this blog post, it now says edit post. So if you have inherited a site from your organization, a company, somebody gave it to you, whatever it might be, and you're like, there's all this content, I don't know how to find anything. That's a really, really quick little thing. Go to the piece of content that you want to make a change on. And if it says edit post, page, product, event, whatever it happens to say, edit something, that's what type of content that is. And then we could say edit the post and jump over to it. I'm going to go back to the home page, the welcome page, and I'm going to enable the visual builder. This is probably going to force me to put in a username and a password as well. So Divi is a paid theme. It's not free, but it's, in my opinion, it's the best out there. I've been using it for almost 10 years now. There's a little demo that kind of walks you through like what is Divi, all this kind of stuff. I'm just going to kind of show you what this is. when you turn Divi onto a particular page, you get these three options. You can either use existing content, you can choose a pre-made layout, which is what we're going to do, or you can clone an existing page. We can't clone any pages because we don't have any pages built with Divi yet. I'm going to choose a pre-made layout. And this brings up similar to the theme browser that we looked at, but this is all inside of Divi. So Divi comes pre-packaged with, it's still loading them here, 330 layout packs. Each layout pack is like 4, 5, 6, or 7 individual pages, all themed or styled together. So there's a home page, a landing page, a services page, about page, contact page, that all follow the same exact style. And so if I come over here and filter something down, let's filter down by like food and drink, and I can scan through and I can hover over and see what these are going to look like. I'm going to go back. I like this little ramen. It's towards the end of the day and I'm hungry. I'm going to click ramen shop. I've entered now into this layout pack. And there's a menu page, a contact page, a blog, about, landing, and home. I can come over here and I can scroll through and be like, yeah, this is a good looking theme, or nope, this is not what I want. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, yeah, I want to let's load the home page. And I'm going to say, use this layout. And I'm going to tell it to replace the existing content, this little checkbox at the bottom, because that Astral Volkswagen stuff doesn't really matter. So use this layout, and this is where it is going to ask me to plug in a username and password. This is what you would get if you're paying for Divi. And that just like said, yep, it's okay to do this. And then I'm going to import, and most of the time this works pretty well. It hangs at 1% for like 10 to 12 seconds, and then it should jump up. So it's not going to take this long. I hope not. We'll give it 30 seconds, so we'll see what happens. It's grabbing all the assets, it's pulling them all down from Divi's site. It's loading them all onto that page. It's getting all the modules loaded. Essentially, Divi is just an advanced version of the block editor. There's different blocks, different modules that do different things. And so it just loaded this entire layout, and everything that's built into it is free for me to use. The images, the buttons, the styles, the color, all the text is going to be Latin. But just like with the block editor, I can kind of hover around. And if I want to make an edit to that text, I click on the little gear, and there's my text block, and there's my trusty WYSIWYG that I can go in and manipulate. I can add, remove, save that block, and move on. If I wanted to change Explore Our Menu to just Our Menu, I do that there, and this is a button module, like a block. And I say save. And I roll through, and I can just make whatever changes I want. I could swap out that image. Notice it's got like a little hover state. I could go in, I could say that's not actually our food, and I change that out. And on the homepage, this is what content's loaded. I can also eliminate entire sections if I want to, or clone entire sections. So I'm going to save this page. And again, just like before, I'm now going to go in, and this is going to be like heavy on the site and the server, but I'm going to open about, contact, services, testimonials. And I'm going to say use the Divi Builder, and I'm just going to blast through and turn this on for each one of these.
So if you had not clicked the replace the information on that page option, would it have preloaded it with the information you already had, or how would that have affected the design?
Yep, good question. It would still, if I'd unchecked that, it would keep all that content and it would just push it all to the bottom. So it would still load that fancy layout that it did, but then I'm going to get all of my crummy looking stuff down below. And that is an important thing to keep in mind. You don't want to rip out all your content all of a sudden. So we will turn on the builder. So this was the this is the contact page. I'm going to click build on the front end. Come on, contact page. I'm going to load a layout. This is going to be the food and drink contact page. Use the layout. I'll let it run. Services page, food and drink. Services is the wrong name. This is not services, so we'll just pick something like menu. We'll load that layout, import, Testimonials, again, we're kind of, converting the site into a ramen shop as we do this. That's okay. And then let's do the about page there. We'll load that one and import. And so as I work my way back through these, I can see, so the contact page is done. I'll save that one. My about page, I'm just going to ditch that, not worry about that for now. And so again, the main goal here is not necessarily to say like, don't worry about all these themes or your content or whatever, but this is a very quick and easy way to get a very good looking site that you've got 305 different layouts inside of Divi, all for like the one price, and be able to say, yeah, it's a nonprofit. Here's 42 different nonprofit layouts. And then you can go in and you can manipulate and set, your own colors and your own fonts and your own layouts and all that kind of stuff. And so when I'm all said and done with this, I'm going to exit the visual builder. And now we've got this weird hybrid thing going on where homepage is this, but it looks pretty good. We've got a little animation there on that button. Looks fine. Cool little graphic. About page, I think, is still the old one. Services, still the old one. Testimonials. Brought this in. Blog, I don't think we loaded anything here. Contact, we did load a layout there. And so the other kind of cool thing is that just like with the block editor, all of these modules, which is just the term inside of Divi, you can save. You can save as global items, so you can like lock them all together. So for instance, if you have a newsletter sign up and you're like, I want this newsletter sign up on every single page, or at least every page that I do want it on, it should be the same exact thing. You can lock an item and make it global and then say it goes on these different pages. So it's pretty cool. Yep. When you buy Divi, where does it appear in WordPress? Good question. I actually already loaded that one. So when you buy Divi, they give you a zip file on your computer, and then you would go into Appearances, Add New, and then instead of searching through this, which you won't find Divi in here, these are all the free themes, you would click Upload Theme, choose a file, and then that's where you would upload Divi right there. And then it would show up just in your theme library like this, and then you just activate Divi right there. Last little bit, we got 3 minutes left, and all I want to do here is talk about backups and updates. Dashboard updates is the screen where all of the updates that need to happen will show up. That is the WordPress core, plugins, and themes. Some advice about plugins and themes: if you're not using them, get rid of them. If this weren't just like a demo site for me to do this class, I would go through and I would delete all of these themes that I'm not using. Any plugin or theme that's on your site, whether it's active or not, if it's out of date, it's a big vulnerability. So you want to keep your site up to date. However, back up your website first. Back up the website first. So this last little thing that I want to do, and I held off on loading this plugin. This is probably the one last plugin that I want to point out, and that is Updraft Plus. So I'm going to search for Updraft Plus. It should show up down here. I'm going to install the plugin. I'm going to activate the plugin. This is now going to show up over here on the side. And see, this is a really quality plugin because they're like, it takes you to the screen and they're like, here's your next step. Push here to get started. Push here to run your first backup. Like they walk you through it really well. Backup now. I'm going to close out that. This backup should run pretty quick because it's a really tiny site. There's 18 images. There's just a couple pages. There's not a whole lot going on. I will point out, though, that when I loaded that Divi layout, it brought in all of those other images. So actually, if we were to go to the media library, we're going to see now all of these ramen photos that got pulled in through that Divi layout. So if you start experimenting with a lot of layouts, you'll get all the images loaded into your media library for all those different layouts. So if updates pop up, you should run them, but you only after running a backup, because sometimes when you update a plugin, that new version conflicts with another plugin or your theme, or that plugin developer messed up and shouldn't have pushed that version when they did. That just happens. So make sure you've got a backup in place so that you can restore. That's also why I use this Updraft plugin to run backups, is because it has that restore just right there. And this is assuming when the plugin updates and it causes a conflict, it doesn't crash your site. If it crashes your site, you got a different situation. But you always want to make sure you've got a backup. And then also with Updraft, you can set it to run on a regular basis. So we can back up, monthly or weekly or however often we want to. We hit a couple of these questions here. Why should I switch to WordPress from Wix? That's a good question. Wix is one of the easiest platforms to build on. There are limitations in place, just like with WordPress.com. Wix is kind of in that training wheels category where you can do a quick site, you can get it up there and running, but there's just certain functionality that you'll never be able to do. Wix is also not super search engine friendly. They make it really easy to build out a site and get content going, but it's intended to be kind of this entry level platform, where WordPress, we've got sites that do millions of dollars in sales per month in e-commerce, have millions of users, massive chamber of commerce sites. You can just build anything with it or build something small. Where is the Updraft backup stored? Great question. You can push out to any of these different locations. So I manage about 300 sites. We run backups weekly on all of those, some daily. Push them to Google Drive, and I pay for 20 terabytes of space. It's $100 a year. We just push them all there. We keep a month's worth of backups in case we need to roll stuff back. And you can't yet. And so Alan's question, you can store it within your web host, which is essentially on your server, or offload it somewhere. The most important thing is that it leaves your website, because if your website gets hacked, your backups got hacked with it. So run the backups, download them, push them somewhere. Yeah, that is 5:02. Any last minute questions? I can hang out for a little bit. This bird's chilled out on the windowsill over here. Thanks, Alan. It always feels like so much content. It is. So I appreciate everybody that hung in for 2 hours. It's a lot. So but it's a worthwhile journey. I mean, WordPress is one of my favorite things on the planet, as nerdy as that sounds. It's let me run my own business, and it's just great that it gives everybody kind of a voice on the internet, and for free, other than the hosting amount. You can really jump in and you can build whatever you want to build, and nobody's going to stop you. So it's pretty cool. Good question. My email, I'll put it in here in the chat. It is boomer@bigboomdesign.com. No S on design. Meeting. Cool. That is in there. I get a bunch of emails daily, so if I don't get back to it immediately, don't worry, I will. It just sometimes takes a little bit. And I will go ahead. Let me look and grab those calendar dates. So next Wednesday from 3 to 5, I'm teaching another A/B Tech class, and that is on Google Analytics. Next Tuesday from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m., I'm teaching an e-commerce class, and that is through Blue Ridge Community College. That's next week, Tuesday and Wednesday. And then the following week, I'm teaching that same WooCommerce class from 3 to 5 on Wednesday. So this week was WordPress. Next week is Google Analytics. The following week on Wednesdays each time, is the e-commerce class, with the addition of Tuesday next week is also an e-commerce class through Blue Ridge Community College. And yeah, all those are free. And happy Entrepreneurship Week, everybody. Yeah, one more question. Oh yeah, let's see here. List of events somewhere, so I kind of just ran through those. Also, you can email me if you've got questions. I try to put the classes that I'm teaching on our website, but sometimes I forget until the day before I'm teaching. HostGator versus Wix. HostGator is just a hosting company, and you can host anything you want at HostGator. Wix, Weebly, Squarespace, Shopify are all platforms that are proprietary that must be hosted with that company. You can't host a Squarespace site anywhere but Squarespace. Same with Wix, Weebly, Shopify, all of those. You must host with them, which is good. You don't have to think about hosting, but then you're in their boat whether it syncs or not. And you can't control it. Yeah, our solutions, our class page is blank. I'll get those on there. Thanks, Alan. I stopped teaching for like a couple years. I also just took off and I just rode to Alaska on my motorcycle and back, and I took 3 months off. And so I like purged everything off and I was like, I'm not available. So I'm just now looping myself back into reality in North Carolina.
Back.
Cool. Thanks. Well, yeah, thanks everybody. If you've got any questions, let me know. If you have a site you're building out, you want to take a look at it, feel free to shoot me access to it. Yeah, I mean, so as far as a company, we specifically manage, build, and support WordPress only sites, and ideally in Asheville whenever possible. So yeah, so WordPress on HostGator, and HostGator I'm sure has a WordPress package. If you go to hosting, there's probably one that specifically says WordPress hosting, which is good because it'll have it pre set up and you'll just like get a username and password rather than having to like walk through the process. So. Well, thanks everybody. Y'all have been great. Shoot me any last minute questions through email. Everybody go have a great day.